Hi everyone, it's Clive. Welcome to the Mitchell Brewery. The boiler has been filled up, it's boiled, and I'm letting it now cool down to less than 80 degrees C. And my setup here, I don't normally have my iPad next to my boiler. Not a good idea because it would just get covered in water, etc. So I've just got this out really just to show you. This is the online version of the recipe that I'm using, the hopped up brown ale, and you can see that it gives you all the recipe, all the ingredients, and you can see for yourself there what I'm going to be using in my recipe. In fact, what I normally do is I look at what ingredients I've got left, and then I'll substitute the malt and the hops according to what's in the Mitchell Brewery store cupboard. So here you go. I've got my plan and my little trusty notebook, so I'm going to crack on now. This is Maris Otter Pale Malt, and this is the backbone of the beer. This will provide most of the sugar that goes to form the alcohol, and I use about 4 kilograms of this particular malt, and then there'll be various additions of various other malts which will give it colour and other flavours, multi flavours into the brew. 9 litres of the boiled and cooled water have been decanted into the mash tun, and then I've added all of the malt into the mash tun. What I need to do now is give it a good old stir, because what you want at this stage is the water to have contact with all of the malt grains to dissolve the malty sugar away from the grains and into solution. Now here we go, we've got our nice malty porridge ready to be sealed up. So what I need to do now is not mess about, because I need this to stay warm. So I'll get the lid to the mash tun, and I've got a special cover that I place on top here to give it a little bit of extra insulation. That's the mash tun sealed up, and it will sit and steep now for the next 90 minutes. It's an hour and a half later, and the mash tun has been sitting very patiently. This is one of my favourite stages. I'm just going to take off the cover and reveal the malty goodness inside. Oh, lovely. It's a lovely malty Ovaltine smell. Now this is going to be drained off into one of my containers, and then I'm going to sparge all of this water through here. The idea of this is the sparging acts as a sort of wash to remove the sugar from the grains into solution, and that solution then goes back into the boiler to be boiled up, ready for the hop addition. I'm draining off the first flush of solution from the mash tun because this often is packed with fine particles, and what I'll do is I'll tip this back through here, and this will then act as a sort of filter bed to capture those particles. What I have here is the fine rose from a watering can, and I use this to sprinkle the water which has been boiled and cooled to less than 80 degrees, and all of this will go through here, and I sprinkle this through the thing, and basically the solution then comes out, and it will probably more than fill that, so I've got a spare container. So what I do now is just turn the tap, and then you can see the water comes out, and then I turn on this tap, and then this will take in the order of about 25 minutes. The sparging took just over half an hour, and what I've got to do now is take this sweet wort, as it's called now, which is the sugary solution, and put it back into the boiler and get that boiling again. Hear that? That's the sound of the boiler. And at this stage, when we have a sweet wort which is laden with sugar and plenty of solids in suspension, that halfway through I usually get the boiler cutting out. Okay, in the meantime I've been hydrating some yeast ready for the pitching yeast later. This is the yeast I've been using, Mango Jacks M36, and what I do is I boil 110 mils of water, which I placed into this beer mug, and then when this is cooled to less than 30, I basically tip the yeast in, and then making sure that everything is thoroughly sterilised, so this thermometer is sterilised, I'll give it a bit of a stir now, and this used to be tipped in later, so it's nicely hydrated. The sweet wort is now at 100 degrees C and it's time to add the first of the hops. And I've actually got two varieties here. I've got what is called flake hop, so you can see this is sort of vacuum packed from the hop cones. This here is pelletized hops, so that's why I put them in this little bag, because basically they break down to nothing and cause a right problem in the boil. So I'll add these in like this, and then these we'll add in, and I shall give them a bit of a stir, make sure that they are completely submerged, and these are basically gone in at the start of the hot boil and they'll stay in there throughout the duration. And these are bittering hops, so I've added Chinook and Simcoe hops at this stage. That's annoying. The boiler cut out 20 minutes before the end, so I'm going to have to empty it and put it back in. This is going to set me back a good 45 minutes, I reckon. Okay, it's not too bad actually, but you can see there is some stuff on. I'll give it a good clean and hopefully that will basically reset and it'll work when I put it back on to boil. As usual, I spend half my time tirelessly sterilising and cleaning and sluicing and rinsing all the containers. Boiler back up and 100 degrees, took about 40 minutes, that's not too bad. I've added another addition of hops and there'll be another 20 minutes before the end, and then I'll add this small bag of Nelson Sauvin hops as we cool down. I'm just about to add this beauty here, which is the copper coil, which I'll use to cool down the bitter wort. This is a marvel of low-tech technology. It's a copper coil through which cold water flows, and when it comes out the other end it's warm. It's basically the water acts as a heat exchanger, so the copper extracts the heat from the bitter wort. Fantastic. I've added the copper coil into the boiler because basically it needs to be sterilised as well, so 10 or 15 minutes in here will do a good job of sterilising. There we go, that's the end of the hot boil. So let's turn off the boiler and then turn on the chiller. So there we go, the chiller has taken less than 20 minutes to cool this volume of bitter wort from 100 degrees to less than 30, which is pretty remarkable. So I'm just now going to transfer this to the primary fermentation container. Right, I've got 5 gallons of bitter wort, I've got my yeast, and I've got my dry hops. I've got Citra and I've got Pilgrim, and they're weighted down with marbles. And I'm just going to add all these, and then this will be tucked up then for another week before the next stage. Well, here we go. It's a week later and the primary fermentation has completed, and here you go, you can see that's ready to now be decanted from here into a pressure barrel. I've just added one of these beer fining sachets, and I've got 42 bottles, all sterilised and rinsed and rinsed and rinsed and washed. And I've got my siphon, and what I'm going to do next is, like I said, transfer into the pressure barrel. Fermentation, and I've just weighed out about 70 grams of sugar, which will then, I will probably put in solution with a bit of this and then decant into here. All of the beer has now been transferred. See, that's the leftover sludge, mixture of yeast and stuff from the malt, and we've got a reasonable amount, I don't know, more than about 3/4 of a barrel here, which is pretty good. I'm going to leave that for an hour and then I'm going to put it into the bottles. This is my trusty glass hydrometer that you use for measuring alcohol content, and After I started the brewing process last week, before the primary fermentation stage, I got a reading of 1.045, which, using this ready reckoner table, gives us an estimated 5.8% alcohol content. Now, in order to calculate the final gravity, so we start with the original gravity, which is this value here, and then essentially as the sugar is converted to alcohol, that figure will come down. Then you can subtract the final gravity from the original gravity, and this will then give you an estimate of the amount of sugar in solution, which can then equate to an alcohol content because the sugar converts to alcohol. So what we do is we pop the hydrometer into here, and then we just take a reading from here. So let me do that. Okay, my hydrometer has given me a reading of 1.010. So if we subtract that from 1.045, we get a figure of 35. Now if we divide that by 7.4, we get the alcohol content of 4.73% alcohol by volume after the primary fermentation stage. So remember, this is only halfway through the brewing process. So we're on track for getting a reasonably high alcohol content for this beer. On the home straight now, and some of you will groan when you see how I transfer the beer into bottles. Some of you give me advice, thanks very much, but I'm going to stick to my trusty container. I've added a tip of a teaspoon of brewing sugar to each of the bottles to give it a little bit of extra, and then I'm going to put caps onto the bottles that need them. So I've got some Grolsch style bottles at the back there, so home straight. And there we go, that's another batch of beer all bottled up. Okay everyone, cheers then, happy brewing.